Greetings. Once again, we would like to welcome you back to our Lessons in Living Character seminar. This is the 19th session that we're having together. I trust that you've had time to begin to apply the quality of generosity in your life, and that you found it very helpful, and that you are beginning to have an idea how to present this to others. This session we are going to talk about how to present your lesson material to a classroom of children. And so I would like you to turn to page 40 in your manual. And we're going to cover some of these instructions that are on page 40 and 41. I've written this so that you can feel comfortable once you begin to understand the material, that when you go in the classroom, you can be sure of good success in your teaching. So let's turn to page 40. There will say teaching presentation for teachers or for parents and teachers. The first point is to read the lesson materials to your students. And then you are to teach the children the content or the information in the lesson material and teach them the principles outlined in it. You remember in previous sessions I asked you to identify the principles in this lesson, which are identified often through the questions that are there in the lesson plan. So now you've read the lesson to the children, and you've talked about the principles that are in that lesson to them. Number 3 is that you are to talk to them personally about how you personally have learned in this process, in the saying and writing, practicing, doing, and teaching others forms of this lesson. So the idea is for you to give from your own example how this is changing your own life. And then you can begin to discuss the questions and the answers in the saying and writing section. Now, this can be done sometimes within small groups of 5 or 6 or maybe 4 children with an older child. Or you can do it as a whole classroom with the teacher leading the exercises. Now, this can be an interactive thing as you are discussing and answering the questions with the children. Number 5 is that you're to have the children write the correct answers in the saying writing section of their worksheets. or in as we discuss the workbooks that you have given to them. You may have already done the coloring at this point before you start the lesson to create an interest in them in the material. After they've written the correct answers to the story in the saying and writing section, you are to do an oral review with them. We may have discussed this a little bit on the previous session that we've had. In talking about a form of retention learning. One form of retention learning that I've seen particularly in India, is how the students repeat back what they have either written on papers or have learned from the teacher. In this way, the learning process is reinforced. So when you've had the children write the correct answers on the questions in their workbook, then review the questions and the answers with them. The best way to do that is to repeat both the question and the answer for them. You can first repeat the question and then have them repeat the question back to you. Then give a concise, brief answer for the question that covers the material of that question, and have them repeat that answer back to you. If you do this with each question, you will be assured that your children are learning well the material. Using this process, I've seen even small children begin to write in their workbooks as you do this system of oral review. I encourage you to do this because this process is very important to the next following steps that will be done in this course for them. If you do this, you will be very confident that they're learning exactly what you're teaching them. Number 7 is the process. Now you're going to teach them how to apply the principles they have learned from the story. So they have learned the principles from the story on a particular quality, and they've also heard you demonstrate an example from your life how that principle has made a difference in your life. And now we come to the practicing and doing section. The practicing and doing section is that you are going to teach them how to apply these principles, as we have mentioned before, to their thoughts, to their attitudes of their heart, to their words, and to their actions. Now, because of your example, how you have done the same process, the same thing with these principles. This will help them to also follow you in this application process. This will be a good time of discussion within your classroom. If you have older children in your classroom, perhaps they can help the younger children in this discussion to understand how this applies to life. Remember, you are teaching the child to think about how to apply the principle, in forming character from the inside. How is this principle going to change the way they think? Maybe about their relationships with their mother, father, their brothers and sisters. How's this principle going to change their attitude of how they respond to their relationships, whether they're friends or their family? What words, how is this going to change the way they speak to their parents and to their siblings? And then the fourth, how is this going to change the way they treat people? Are they going to be kind to them? Whatever principle they're learning, are they going to be attentive? This is going to show in the way, the outward part. Remember, we said in a previous session that the thoughts and the attitudes are like the roots of a tree. That's the source of the life of the tree. The words and the actions are the outward expression from the life of the tree, as it's a life of a person. The words and the actions are an extension of the thoughts and the attitudes. So reinforce that with your children. But get them to think about how the thoughts they have will change the attitudes of their heart. And you will see that reflected in their words and their actions. Number 8, after you've completed this process and discussion with them in the classroom or with your children at home individually, lead them through the practicing and doing session. When you've done the practicing and doing section, then you're going to lead them through the teaching others section. Now let me go back just a little bit. When you're leading children through the practicing and doing, and the discussion part that we talked about in the classroom, how they apply that to life, talk about how this applies in their home. Because you are going to tell them after your class, they're going to go home and apply this in their setting at home. Perhaps you can do this during the week if it's in school. And then on the weekend, they can apply these principles of practicing and doing in their home with their families, their father and their mother. And then the next week, when they come back into your classroom, or when they come the next Sunday into your Sunday school, you can ask them if they've practiced and applied these principles in their family. That is the place where you will see if a child really understands the principle. So that's number 8. You do the practicing and doing at home, and then you review it when they come back into your classroom to see if they've actually applying it into their life. So number 9 also does say that you can use character songs and memory words in the lesson songs and poems to reinforce these principles in the children's lives. Number 10, as we talked about, you can follow up at the beginning of each classroom session to check the students' progress in their homework of practicing, doing, and teaching others principles of character. Let me say a little bit about the teaching others. When you see the child begin to practice the quality in their life, and they are sharing from their own experience, then you know the child really understands the material. And then we said that's the place, of course, where you can give the awards. So number 11 is when you've completed all 5 lessons of the character quality being studied, meet with parents for an honest evaluation of the student's character development. And then number 12 is, when necessary, give more practical exercises to the parents for the student to do who may not be following through in the practicing, doing, teaching others sections of the lesson materials. That's number 12. Every child will not be at the same level. So it will be necessary, especially for smaller children, that you take time to reinforce and gently lead them in their growth of practicing these principles. And I believe using that evaluation tool will greatly help you in their learning. Number 13, we talked about that you can give character awards publicly to those children who've completed their assignment and are first of all understanding the principle, then doing the principle, and they're teaching others the same quality they have been studying. Remember, we mentioned that it's necessary to praise children for good character, not just for their achievement. And we see that point in number 14. Many times we praise children for good grades, but we also need to recognize children for good character. And when we see that, we need to encourage them in the demonstration of good character. Now we're going to close this session, and I want you once again to go in your groups and to look at your manual and go through these steps on page 40 and 41. You can talk about them with your coordinator, and they can describe more detail of how this process is done, so you will understand in a very clear way how this applies to your setting, whether it's in schools or whether it's in another location. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you in the next session.